One of the things we believe in profoundly at Cambridge Assessment is underpinning the assessments which we run with research. Evidence-based qualifications are critical to us, and we believe critical to the education system. Within the research programme, we constantly look at innovative approaches which can be brought to bear both on the way in which we research qualifications and assessments and the way we operate them on a day-to-day basis. One of the innovative approaches which we've examined and we're using in research is rank ordering. Rank ordering was first looked at in Cambridge Assessment during the 1990s. Since that early work, our senior staff have used rank ordering constantly in research work on the characteristics of the qualifications, how they're measuring, and it's been used extensively within comparability work, comparing standards over time, different specifications, and the different qualifications from different awarding bodies.
My name's Tom Bramley and I work in the research division at Cambridge Assessment, and part of what I do involves using this technique of rank ordering to investigate some of the problems that we face in assessment research. Some of the mathematical details involved in rank ordering can be a bit complex, but the basic idea is really simple. It involves asking people which of two things or more things they think is the better. You can make any kind of paired comparison between two things as long as you've got some kind of basis for making that comparison. So for example, if you were comparing apples and oranges, people say, well, they're completely different things. But you can compare them on the basis of their weight or their price or their taste. And in the same way, the kind of judgments that we're making in assessment research are about the quality of people's work in an exam. It's exactly the same kind of judgments that people are making all the time in everyday life. These kind of judgments have been around for a long time. Even as far back as the 1850s, people were comparing the brightness of lights or the loudness of sounds, and the idea was to see how those judgments of perceived brightness and loudness related to the actual physical brightness and loudness. And it's those kind of techniques that we're still using today. The more similar things are, the easier it is to compare them. So if you're comparing works of fiction, for example, it's easier to make comparisons of works within the same kind of genre, such as crime fiction, than it would be to compare, say, a crime novel with a piece of poetry. And it's the same with examinations. We wouldn't be asking people to compare a chemistry exam with a French exam because the kinds of work would be too different. But it does make sense to ask experts to compare the work in one chemistry examination with the work in another chemistry examination. Comparing more abstract things like the quality of a piece of artwork might seem more difficult, but we're all capable of making these kind of judgments in our own lives. But if you want the judgments to be of the kind of quality that we want, you would need an expert to do it who knows what to look for. So it's quite reasonable to ask an art expert to compare the quality of two paintings. Similarly with examinations, we will get people who are experts in the kinds of subjects that are being assessed to make the kind of comparative judgments that we're dealing with. What we're trying to do is to put together all the judgments of all the experts to create a scale on which the objects that they were comparing can be represented by a numerical value. But the disadvantage with that is that people can differ in their overall impression of how good things are. So if you've got two experts, one might think that the whole set of things were quite good, and the other might think that on the whole they're not very good. The advantage of the paired comparison method and the ranking method is that they're just making relative comparisons, so the individual judge's overall perception of how good they are as a set doesn't matter. And the reason we need to do this is that within a test we have the mark scale and everything can be compared on the basis of that. But if you've got two different tests, the two mark scales have no relation to each other. So we need to create this scale by the expert judgments so that we can put everything together on a single scale and then make the comparisons we want to make.
Rank ordering is a radical approach, and it challenges quite a few of the assumptions and practices associated with mark-based qualifications and assessments. Innovation and openness is critical to Cambridge Assessment, and so whilst we're content with how we've used it to date, we're also constantly monitoring its applicability in the future to live awarding.